Good morning. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to Live with Liz. Today we are talking about baselining for law firms. And this is a crucial exercise, and I really want to dive right into it. But I feel like we should, just hang out for a minute and catch our breath. Have you gotten your coffee? I'm going to take a sip. That's really important. Okay, I guess I'm ready now. So this topic, I feel, is incredibly important. I hear this term baselining, and you may have heard it before. You may be familiar with the process. If you have a business background, you might be familiar with process improvement and baselining for these methods of identifying where you're beginning in a process. You might have heard it in sports or technology. It's a computer term too. But for our context, we're looking at defining our foundation and our starting point for legal marketing and business development for your law firm. And this is something that I'm surprised at how infrequently I see this being conducted, this exercise. We talk about strategic planning and what goes into it. We talk about annual planning, but often this step is overlooked. And when you come to work with an advisor or a consultant for business development, expect to go through an exercise similar to this, where you gather all of the information about your firm. We look internally and externally. I like to delineate these things internally and externally because it helps make sense of things in my mind. And we go through an exercise of figuring out where you're beginning from. What do things look like today? We paint that macro picture so that we can make micro decisions, right? You have these lofty goals of growing, getting new clients, but how do you really put a figure on it? What do you actually have control over, and what can you influence? What can't you influence? And where do we have to say, oh, we're just screwed. This is something we have no control over. External pressures in the marketplace, political issues, Mother Nature. Hello, COVID-19, I'm talking to you. This wrench in the room that is certainly affecting the annual planning of law firms around the world that are saying, well, some of them are saying, wow, well, we were pretty successful during COVID. Maybe we don't need to invest in marketing and business development. We didn't go anywhere, and we still came out on top. But most firms have seen revenue declines, and legal services have certainly suffered during the course of this pandemic. And because of the pandemic, looking forward and figuring out what that future looks like is, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. We don't really know what's going to happen. We don't have this crystal ball that can make these decisions for us. And it's really best to probably redefine that starting point right now. So how do we do this? How do we gather this information? What is it exactly that we're looking at, and why? Obviously, we're talking about your resources. So let's start with your resources. People, technology, money. Yes, we're going to talk about money. We want to understand revenues. We want to know where the money comes from. We want to talk about clients in the people section and how they find you. So if you've never conducted a baseline activity before, you can start with yourself. You can start with your firm. You just go straight over to Google or the browser of your choice and do a search for yourself. And as I am conducting this research, when I'm pulling information together, as I go, I create little stopping points for myself when I need to react to something in the future. So I'll create this action item, and I'll call it that. I'll put it right in my notes. I do electronic note taking so that I can go back and search for them, and I don't have to go through a pile of papers and figure out where things are. And it will say action item. So if you've Googled yourself and not much comes up, or you have a common name, you might have an action item that says, fix this. Get the right people to fix this. Set up Google My Business, figure that out. And while you're at this baseline research for yourself and your firm, go ahead and research your competitors and take a look, take a gander at the market, and then think about things from how your client would search for them. This will give you a starting point for how you're found. It gives you just part of that picture when you're pulling this analysis together. It's just one step that you can take to inform the decisions that you're going to make later. And some simple, actionable, realistic items. Why are we doing this? Why do we go through this exercise of figuring out where we are? What's the point? Well, we're trying to ensure your profitability, right? And then more specifically than that, we're trying to get to the point where it's profitability based on growing your client base, growing your revenues. So we have to really figure out where we are to identify where we're going. It sounds simple, but I guess it's really not. So going back to this analysis of the internal analysis, people, technology, money, I'm going to ask you for things like your revenue reports, and we're going to take a look at what the value of a client is. Well, why do we need to know that? Because we're going to try and determine what makes sense to invest based on what we expect to get in return from the clients we bring in. So which services are the most successful for your firm, right? This is a part of our baseline. We want to know which services have been successful, which services have been declining, which services we have the resources to perform, where we want to grow as a firm with people, what technology we're missing, what technology is not being used, what we can just let go. And all of these things will become a part of the overall strategy that we define together. That strategy will include all of those little action items that are achievable, that are realistic, that are measurable, that we can maybe accomplish something together, right? So let's break down the people part for a minute. You have internal people, you have external people. So your internal people, obviously all the resources, your human resources. How does human resources fit in with business development? Well, it's really important to look at the two together. And you have these human resource priorities, you might have this internal marketing effort, and there might be some overlap in the resources that you have available. Well, make that a part of your analysis and figure out your baseline. This informs your resources, what's available to you. Where are you missing somebody? What do you need to have done that you don't have done already? And what policies of HR can help with the people you have going? So, what activities are they conducting for business development that are tied to their employment, for example? We will get into every minute detail about how those things work in order to create that baseline. Does everyone have an individual business development plan? Do people have group business development plans? Do different departments at your law firm or areas of practice have certain goals and things that they need to achieve, metrics that you're going to count later on? Case success, grant rates if you're an IP firm and know what that means. Things like new clients, new meetings, how many meetings did they have with new people, have any clients left? People rates in general for your firm. Retention, what does that look like? During the pandemic, we have seen so much movement in the marketplace with people leaving and people going and coming and going and coming and going. And where are they today? And lots of people are setting up new firms. So you see these successes that people talk about during the pandemic, and they're, our revenues increased and we're actually doing fine. And then, you see all this movement, even with some of those firms where maybe the picture and reality are not what they seem. And that's all the more reason to dive into this and to measure where we are so that we can get going for the next year. People will come and say, let's just go do this email marketing campaign. Let's go do this PPC. We need to do this baseline first. Let's figure out where we are today and create a strategy that's workable, that ensures that profitability for you. So externally, the things that we can't control that we might have influence over, who are our partners out there? What do our law firm partners look like with people? Who are our clients who are happy? Who are our clients who are not happy? Which clients have the ability to send more work, which don't? Are there business clients or corporate clients that we've had that have suffered, that have shut down? What do their industries look like? Are we going to be able to service their needs? Are they gone? So have we touched base with them? What does our communication strategy with them look like? Has it been successful? This is all a part of creating that foundation and baselining. These are the questions that you need to ask to make these assessments. So when you're working together with someone like me, the way that I end up doing it is breaking it down into phases where I collect all this information. So I'm going to start with you. I'm going to send a huge list of questions and requests for documentation and information. I don't expect anyone to have everything or be willing or available or possible to share everything, but we start with as much as we possibly can, and we do that internal part together. And then we on our own will go do some of the external searching for you and say, okay, we've taken the external data, we've matched it up with the internal data, and here's the baseline. This is where we're starting. This is our market position. These are the resources we have available. These are the trends that we've been able to identify with the information that we have available. This is where we think the market is headed. Now, I've seen several industry reports for legal services in the United States. They're predicting that legal services are going to see an increase in revenues over the next 5 years, substantially, right? We've already seen certain sectors benefit from the pandemic, but predicting the future is not easy. Obviously, things like bankruptcy or unemployment, those areas certainly saw an uptick. Kind of feels sad to talk about that. But this is what we're trying to do together when we're looking at internal and external. So people are a big part of it. Technology is a big part of it. What resources on the technology side do you have? So we're going to do a rundown and say, we want to understand everything. We want to see that big picture. So we understand the people part now. Okay, let's look at all of these different resources. Do you have a library? What subscriptions do you have? Let's look at everything that's cloud-based. What CRM system are you using? What is your email marketing tool? What kind of communication tools do you have? What have you already invested in, and where do we see holes? So we'll take that list and we'll say, okay, all of these things work together. These things don't work together. There are better solutions out there than what you've already got. Maybe you have a lot of investments in things that don't all necessarily talk to each other or play together nicely, and maybe there are some areas of improvement. But by looking at the baseline and seeing where we are and everything you have, we'll be able to identify the opportunities that exist that we wouldn't otherwise know about, or we might just be guessing at. And this brings together a lot of different people usually in a firm. So you think that one person might have their brain wrapped around everything for you, and that's usually not the case. And this exercise lets you uncover all of these missing details that maybe you didn't spend time thinking about before. You really get to say, hey, wait a second, that library assistant knows way more than I thought she did. Let's figure that out. Yeah, wow, amazing how that works. So as part of that baselining when it comes to marketing, we're also going to look at your current investments. We're going to talk about the money. What are you investing in? Do you have profiles? Are you paying for thought leadership? Are you paying for advertisements? These are separate from the business development expenses. The business development expenses being more of the ones that have to do with front-facing, people-facing, client-facing activities like attending conferences. So going back kind of to that very first slide with Liz, where we talk about the difference between marketing and business development, this also becomes a part of your baseline. So this exercise is really crucial to be able to make those decisions about how much money you spend and where you spend it. And what's the point of doing that? Are we trying to increase the value per client because we're trying to sell the legal services that bring in the most revenue, the most lucrative services? So maybe we're going to focus on litigation instead of on prosecution because we know that that is going to be more lucrative and that the clients coming in are going to spend more on us for less time. Maybe not. We know we're excellent at this certain service, so we want to expand this area. We're going to invest in it now, and that might mean that we take a short-term hit because we're going to really spend a lot of money, maybe take some money from another area and put it into this one because this is where we can grow. But we're going to look at that external market and see if that's even warranted, right? What are people spending money on? What are companies investing in? Do they need the services that we're offering? So why bolster this area if the trends see it going in a different way? So maybe we'll take anti-counterfeiting for an example. If you have all of these firms going to, I don't know, Amazon or some sort of alternative legal service provider or a network rather than using your law firms, does it make sense to invest in that practice area if you're not a part of where the corporations are going to get the services that they need? And those are the kinds of questions that we ask when we're doing baselining. We're just figuring out your starting point. If you have questions about how to compile this information, how to analyze it, and how to create a meaningful strategy that leads to profitability, that's what we're here for. It's the nerdiest thing that we do, that we love doing. And I highly encourage you not to skip this strategy step. Don't just dive in and spend money on these marketing investments without having an idea of what you're trying to get out of them. We'd love to help you in any way we can. If you have one-off questions, we're always happy to answer them. Send an email to solutions@firmforward.com and follow us all over social media @firmforward. We look forward to seeing you at Live with Liz, where we talk about business development and legal marketing every week on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Central Time. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.